Volume 1, Chapter 68. The Unfortunate Kazan. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Race. Goblin Level. 15 Class. Lord, Horde Chief. Possessed Skills. Ruler of the Horde, Insurgent Will, Overpowering Howl, Swordsmanship B+, Insatiable Desire, King's Soul, Ruler's Wisdom I, Eyes of the Blue Snake, Dance at Death's Border, Red Snake's Eye, Magic Manipulation, Soul of a Crazed Warrior, Third Impact, the Third Chant, Instinct, Ruler's Wisdom II, Divine Protection. Goddess of the Underworld Attributes. Darkness, Death Subordinate Beasts. High Cobalt Hesu, LV1, Gastra, LV20, Cynthia, LV20, Orc King Bui, LV36, in the dark and damp cave were glowing mosses that lit the endless path. From up above were icicles, hanging, and beads of water dropped down from them, echoing a dripping sound in the ever-quiet cave. After accepting the Gordab's invitation, we traveled here to this cave, situated 2 days north of Ganra. This way. Guiding us was Yellow, who had borrowed the form of a bird of misfortune Skyura. I don't know what manner of logic or sorcery he's employed, but he is somehow able to make corpses lead us around. My fellow goblins that came from the eastern village like me, were all wary at the odd sight. But the goblins from the tribes all seemed to be used to this, as they only laughed, saying, "They're that kind of people." With the now one-eyed chief of the Gaidga, the hero of Ganra. The first archer Gadiata, Gilmi, and the oldest of the 4 tribal chiefs. The chief of the riders, Alyahalia, we headed for the cave of the Gordab. Along the way, the leader of the druids, Gi-Za, met up with us. He wouldn't take no for an answer, so in the end, we had to take him along as well. Eventually we reached a stair-like path that descended to the lower levels of the cave. It was dark, but that wasn't a deterrent to us goblins. Unfortunately, the path was narrow, so while normal goblins didn't have a problem, Rashka, who was exceptionally big, found the path uncomfortably small. "This path's too narrow. And too long," he complained. Hearing that, the older chief, Alyahalia, spared no mercy as he jokingly said, "Why don't you go on a diet then?" "I'm not fat, I'm too tall," Rashka retorted. Hearing the banter between the two, Gilmi couldn't help but join in on the fun. "I hear Lord Gi-Go is an accomplished swordsman. How about having him whittle you down?" he said. "I see," Rashka nodded. There was also that option. I didn't say anything, but at the back of my head I threw at Tsukomi, simple_tooltip content equals, Japanese comedy style. One guy says something crazy. This person is called the Boke, also known as the funny man. And then another person corrects him, usually hitting him in the head. This guy is the Tsukomi, also known as the straight man. /simple_tooltip, saying, "From where are you going to cut him?" "The legs." "The head." Thinking to myself, I can't get caught up with this goblin sense of humor, I asked Yellow, "Is the way still long?" "No, we'll be there soon," he curtly replied. This is the 4th time I've asked that question, and that's the same answer he's given each and every time. Seeing how pointless asking was, I stopped bothering, and I just looked around and observed the Gordab's houses that made use of the limestone cavern. The stalactites that formed in the many years, encroached into the cave like bamboo shoots here and there. They stretched out from the ceiling to the ground, and were all over the place, a truly magnificent sight. This place definitely seems like the sort to be a tourist spot. Of course, the small underground lakes scattered throughout the caves are also worth mentioning. In any case, I've counted about 4 or 5 of those stalactites so far. They're not transparent, and are instead brilliantly glowing a faint green hue. This place is truly beautiful. It's almost as if everything's an illusion. As I was thinking that, I noticed something move at the edge of my vision. When I looked toward its direction, what I saw was a small, white lizard, running away. "We've arrived." The bird of misfortune in front of us bowed its head. In front of us was a gaudy door. It was black and ominous. Without the slightest sound, it opened by itself. On the other side of the door were two goblins, both of whom were small and white. With a thud, the bird of misfortune fell to the ground. "It's a pleasure having your acquaintance, King. I am Yellow. This one here is the present head, Master Kazan." Present head, so in other words, the chief of the Gordab tribe is hereditary. The goblin innocently bowed its head. I snuck a peek at Kazan's eyes, and I saw something close to fear and curiosity in them. "I come from the eastern village." When I tried to make a short introduction, Kazan nodded. "My deepest apologies." Master Kazan was born unable to speak. Seeing Kazan bow so much, I generously bowed back. "I don't mind. All that matters is that we're able to understand each other." But for a moment, I did feel a bit out of place. The appearance of these two is far too tidy for a goblin. They don't have the goblin's usual hideous faces and muscular bodies. Their eyes are big, and although their expressions are close to a human's, they're mostly expressionless. They're also smaller compared to other goblins. Even when compared to the Ganra and Gilmy. And as for Kazan, he's just been looking around with those big eyes of his. And then there's that skin of theirs. It might be because they've lived away from the sun for so long, but their skin is so pale. Seeing how different they look, I just can't help but find myself a bit shocked. Honestly, if you were to ask me, they look a lot more like the dwarves of the sprite spoken of in legends rather than goblins. They don't look like they could do well at physical labor either. "So about you submitting to me," at my words, Yellow prostrated himself and Kazan stood attention. "I've been waiting for an opportunity to speak with you about your plans to become king." In a daze, Kazan looked up, not to me, but to something. His face was still, without even the slightest ripple on it. If the odds of this being a trap is low, then this goblin might just be planning to test me. Would that mean then that my strength is only enough to have me recognized as a chief on the level of Rashka? What is Kazan's sickness? Just as they offered, we moved our location to the dwelling of the Gordab. And in a place which could be called a shrine, I sat myself on a chair. The chair was big and comfortable, so I happily listened to their story. I want to settle all issues before I become king. As you might have noticed from looking at our skin, we are different from the other goblins. From Yellow's story, the Gordab tribe is a ritualistic tribe assigned to protect the entrance of the Fortress of the Abyss. Is this true? I asked the others, and they all solemnly nodded. It is said that once the one who shall become our king appears, the gate will open. As the youngest, Gilmy, spoke, Kazan inclined his head, seemingly distressed. "I've seen the Fortress of the Abyss, and was able to enter it though." Giza added, also confused. "That's because the building that is called the Fortress of the Abyss can be entered. But that's only one part of it. Master Giza, when you say fortress, you're referring to the fortress a day's distance north from here, right?" Giza nodded. "But of course, it was such a grand structure. There is nothing more fitting of a king." Giza once referred to that fortress as the symbol of the goblins' unification. I don't think he said that because it had some strange power or anything. He just said it because of his own judgment and prejudice, and maybe because it's his hobby. I mean, he was really happy when he had the biggest house in the village made. As I remembered Reshia's unhappy face, I wryly smiled. I've grown quite fond of that girl, huh? While it's true that the fortress is certainly fitting of a king, what we tribes are looking for is what's beneath it. The door to the underworld lies at the bottom, and it is inside that our goals lie. Looks like we're getting to the crux of the story. What do you mean? I asked. On the other side of the door is where the Blight Lord Discarado lives. And it is because of the miasma that seeps out from the other side that our lives have shortened and our powers have grown weaker. Lord Kazan's illness is that he cannot be hit by sunlight. Certainly. If he's telling the truth, then Kazan definitely can't come to me by himself. The most he could do is invite me to this dark cave. I understand the matter about your illness now. So what's the condition to accept my kinghood? Do I need to subjugate the Blight Lord Discorado? For a moment, the pitch-black Varid coiled around my right arm, throbbed. Absolutely not. We are the guardians of the Blight Lord, why would we attack him? Oh, he looks quite serious. Kazan's shaking his head, and Yellow is really panicking. According to their story, all it's brought to them so far is misfortune, but it seems they're still planning to protect it. Well, even if I get mad here nothing will change, so let's just keep the conversation moving. The condition to become a king is to defeat the giant demon ogre inside the fortress. Ogre, ha. Haven't met one yet. If you could accomplish that, then we could once again hear the voice of the Blight Lord. And if you do us this favor, we will acknowledge you as king. This story is really fishy. If they're that troubled, then why didn't they ask the other tribes for help? From what I've seen, Rashka, Alyahalia, and Gilmy are all concerned about Kazan. If Kazan felt like it, it should have been possible for them to subjugate the ogres. Your story is fishy. Starting from Kazan, I looked at each and every one of the chiefs around me, then I spoke. First, why did Rashka attack Ganra? If it was someone as strong as Rashka, then killing the ogres should have been a trifle task. Rashka frowned. You said it from the start, right, Gilmy? That because there is a curse since ancient times upon the 4 tribes, a king will arise to whom the 4 tribes shall kneel. Gilmy nodded with a stiff expression. Alyahalia, you didn't say anything, so I'm sure you won't mind if I ask you a question. As the oldest of the 4 chiefs, what do you know about the king? With his eyes cast down, I couldn't see his expression. And lastly Kazan. Or should I ask you instead, Yellow? What exactly is it that you want me to do? The other tribes are clearly paying respect to you. If you move from the start, this whole mess shouldn't have even happened, right? I know it's as if I'm interrogating them, but it's imperative that I find out their motives. I don't think they're planning to rebel against me, but it seems there's more to this king than meets the eye. I want to know exactly what that is. That and the reason why they lied to me. Kazan stood up in a daze, and for the first time, he looked at me. As he kneeled down on one knee toward me, Yellow opened his mouth. It is as you've said. We indeed concealed some things regarding the king. Do you know of the treasures we of the 4 tribes possess? I know about Ganra's meteor Bao Bao. Aside from Ganra, the Gaidga have with them the choker of Rath Vidal amulet, the Parajua have the curved spear of the snake ogre lance. And we, the Gordab, have the crystal ball of death crystal. Without these 4 treasures, winning against the ogres is impossible. I knitted my brows at Yellow's words. No matter how hard an enemy the ogres may be, how are the 4 treasures supposed to help? The meteor Bao I saw from before didn't seem that strong. It's because of the weapon's blessings. Ether and skills can't be used inside the fortress of the abyss. I moved my gaze from the prostrated Yellow to Gi Za, but he only shook his shoulders. It seems he doesn't know either. The only things that won't lose power inside are these 4 treasures. So without these 4 treasures, no one can gain the right to be king. This is also the reason why Lord Rashka attacked Ganra. Because the meteor Bao shouldn't have been handed over to another so easily. Now that he mentions it. Is it because of my fearful nature that I ended up doubting everything after doubting once? Lord Alyahalia agreed to work with Rashka because the miasma coming from the fortress of the abyss is reducing the number of beasts to hunt. At this rate, the Parajua tribe will lose their rider. Beasts. Alyahalia added. As for Lord Gilmy's story about the curse, that goes back to Rashka's story. Lord Jylan most likely purposely misled you with that story. I did hear it from Master Jylan, but, and lastly, regarding your question about the Gordab appealing to the other tribes. We aren't able to unify the tribes. Why is that? I looked at Yellow, whose voice was shaking. Because we are weak. In order to unify the tribes, sufficient power is an absolute necessity. It's a simple reasoning, but it's something I can agree with. O King, we have been waiting all this time. Free us, King, we who are weak and frail. After paying his respects, Kazan approached me. He took my hand and placed his own palm against it. O King of Goblins with the heart of man. I was unfazed by those words. Ever since the day I've been born to this world, the sensation of having been once human has been slipping away from me by the day. Please forgive us. The resounding voice was high like that of a girl's. I know there is no karma between us. But please, please save us. When I looked into Kazan's eyes, what I saw was a gaze full of sorrow. They've been suffering since long ago. And because of the miasma, their bodies have grown weaker and weaker, and now, they are at the verge of destruction. He wants me to save them from that. When our palms separated, Kazan once again paid respects to me. Very well. Gilmy, call Princess Narsa and tell her to bring the meteor bow by Unii bow. I will open the path to the Blight Lord Discorado. I called out to pitch black Verid in my mind. The legendary twin-headed snake who dried the waters, isn't that the true form of the Blight Lord? But the only reply was a low-pitched laugh. Oh, how nostalgic. How nostalgic, right, my little brother. As Verid laughed, I knew now for sure that he was with me. Anger welled up from inside me. Damn you, goddess of the underworld Altesia. You dare leave me something so troublesome. What's the point of leaving behind suffering? Is that something a god should do? If you're going to call yourself a god, then you should at least bring happiness to your people. Volume 1, Chapter 69. The Art of Scheming. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race. Goblin level. 15 class. Lord, Horde Chief possessed skills. Ruler of the Horde, Insurgent will, Overpowering Howl, Swordsmanship B+, Insatiable Desire, King's Soul, Ruler's Wisdom I, Eyes of the Blue Snake, Dance at Death's Border, Red Snake's Eye, Magic Manipulation, Soul of a Crazed Warrior, Third Impact, the Third Chant, Instinct, Ruler's Wisdom II, Divine Protection. Goddess of the Underworld Attributes. Darkness, Death Subordinate Beasts. High Kobold Jesu, LV1, Gastra, LV20, Cynthia, LV20, Orc King Bui, LV36, a year has yet to pass since Kazan was born. With her weak body, it wasn't possible for her to go out. So all her life, her playground's always been this dark and narrow cave. Originally, the name Kazan belonged to the founder of the Gordab tribe. But since then, it's been passed down for generations. When the current Kazan received that name, it brought with it a grave duty. A duty she had to carry with her weak and frail body. That duty was to hear the voice of the Blight Lord. And 10 days after she received the name Kazan, she heard the voice of the Blight Lord for the first time. Evil shall hail from the east. With 4 treasures. Before me, when that fragmentary voice reached her ears, her whole body shook before the door. The blood of her ancestors, which was sleeping within her veins, awoke, banishing the anxiety that filled her heart when she was suddenly made Kazan, and reliving within her the memories of her predecessors. Though her own memories have been left untouched, the warmth of her ancestors now fill her. With gladness, she accepted the duty of watching over the gate. But what does the Blight Lord mean by evil? The 4 treasures are definitely the 4 treasures of the 4 tribes, but what does he mean by evil? The girl who had just heard the voice of the Blight Lord for the first time, didn't know what to do. So she turned to her aide and father, Yellow. But in the end, they couldn't figure out what exactly would come from the east. Moreover, when she went to the door to ask, she saw figures of giant demons lording over the fortress. Not just one, but a whole pack of ogres. One of them distinctly stuck out from the pack, possessing greater power than the rest. Most likely, it was the leader of the pack. After seeing that, she quickly fled from the fortress and consulted Yellow. They concluded that the help of the tribes was necessary. So they called forth the chiefs of the 3 other tribes. The strongest of them then, Jilin of Ganra, the strongest now, Rashka of Gadga, and the oldest of them, Alyahalia. But in the end, they could not come to an agreement. Without the strength to lead, goblins won't listen. Having been told that, Kazan proposed a plan under the pretense of a prophecy. They announced that the 400 years of ceasefire that the goddess of the underworld Tija left them has been overturned. But of course, with the temple now overrun by ogres, such a prophecy wouldn't be accepted. The goblin most favorable amongst them when it came to prophecies, Rashka of Gadga, spoke. Evil must be referring to an enemy. It is only with the help of the king that we will be able to stand our ground. Those words became an impetus, causing the ambitious Rashka to bolster his forces. Seeing that, Kazan, who was aware of his talent in ether, taught him how to use it. Then she told him to say this. I have succeeded the seat of the Underworld Gates Oracle. The Oracle of the Underworld. From the very beginning, that was a seat that the Gordab was meant to carry. So declaring that was the same thing as saying that the Gordab tribe was now under their rule. As for any rebellion from the Gordab tribe itself, Kazan's words would immediately silence them. Rashka was shocked, but Kazan and Yellow only nodded to him. The time has come. You shall become the king and save the 4 tribes. Those sweet words were like honey, and Rashka fell to her temptation. There's no need to rely on some fairy tale king, Rashka declared. I will open a path with my own power. Young and ambitious, Kazan, who had gained the memories of her ancestors, played him like a fiddle. Beov Rashka led the forces of Gadga, challenging the strongest tribe then, Ganra. And facing him was none other than the first archer Gadiata and the chief of the strongest tribe, Jilin. At first, the battle favored the veteran, Jilin, but with Rashka able to use ether, the battle eventually ended in his favor. But then a problem arose. The ogres by the gates of the underworld began to move out of the fortress of the abyss. Rashka and his tribe tried to stop them, but he couldn't come up with any remarkable results. But that wasn't too surprising. After all, every single one of the ogres were strong. So even with Rashka's magic, and with Alyahalia on a rider-beast, and even with all the goblins behind them, the ogre's threat wasn't something they could easily vanquish. It was around that time that Gilmi of Ganra asked for help from a goblin from the east. There is an invader coming from the east. When Kazan heard of the goblin's strength from Yellow, she finally realized what that prophecy truly meant. What they have been yearning for all this time has finally come. When she realized that, shame filled her for the foolish scheme she pulled. But still, she needed to fulfill her duty. She needed to fulfill the words of those who protect the gates of the underworld. The evil goblin shall gather the 4 treasures. Under her orders, Yellow used the puppeteer's skill to control a bird of misfortune and track his movements. And time after time, the goblin's actions pulled on their heartstrings, confirming their suspicions. Ah, they thought. This is the goblin who shall save us. And so they invited this goblin who defeated Rashka to the Gordab's home. And in the walls of their ever-dark cave, his words resounded. I will open a path to the Blight Lord. Ah, what strong words! Indeed, for these weak and frail goblins, salvation has at long last come. I'm just human, so of course, there's no way I could predict everything. The only thing I can do is to do my best to create the best result. Or at least, that's what I believe. But, is this really the best result I've been looking for? Unneeded friction between the goblins, and a bloodbath shed. I knit my brows. If it's just the result we're talking about, then I have indeed managed to unite the goblins. If it weren't for them fighting amongst themselves, I probably wouldn't have been able to unify them. The great Jilin of Ganra. He would have led the 4 tribes, and although Rashka's ambitions may have been great, I doubt he would have actually started a revolt. But, still. For some reason, I just can't shake off this disgust. This scheming and plotting that Yellow and Kazan told me. No, that's not quite right. They didn't tell me, I asked them about it. I asked, so they answered. I was at a loss. Kazan was prostrated before me, but, what should I do? O king! Please exact judgment upon the ogres that be taken the fortress. That's also been bothering me. Why? Why now? Of all times, why did the ogres suddenly appear? Strings are being pulled. As I thought that, it felt as if someone was laughing inside me, the red snake, pitch black Varid, who was coiled around my arms like the very incarnation of black flames. It felt as if he was laughing at my troubles. As expected of the goddess of the underworlds, that woman's gift. How irritating. Fine. I need to pull myself together. I need to find out who exactly is on the other side of the underworld gate. After Narsa arrives, we'll head for the fortress of the abyss. Kazan is the most familiar when it comes to the fortress of the abyss. I'm definitely going to need her knowledge as a Kazan. But I wonder. Is embracing this disgust a threat to my plans of creating a kingdom? No, let's put that off for later. Meeting the so-called Blight Lord to solidify my position amongst the 4 tribes comes first. After that, I'll make a decision. A decision on what I should do with her. But then again, I'm not exactly innocent myself. I would sacrifice anything for the sake of my goals after all. So knowing that, can I really judge her? On Kazan's eyes are reflected only one thing. A wish to talk with the Blight Lord Discarado on the other side of the gate. Or perhaps, instead of a wish, I should call it love. Regardless, is that really something I have the right to judge? Is that the sort of king I aspire to be? Without an eek of an answer surfacing, I waited for Narsa to arrive. Long time no see, Chief of the East. It took 2 days for Narsa to bring the meteor bow by Unii bow. Her face was much calmer now, as if she has finally freed herself from some kind of doubt. Did something happen? Without thinking about it, those words slipped out. Narsa glanced at Gilmy for a moment, then she wryly smiled. No. Nothing in particular. I see. I wonder if something happened between her and Gilmy. Well, that's probably not something I could understand. In any case, if it's beneficial to her, it shouldn't be a bad thing. Do you know why I call you here? Yes. Immediately, she kneeled down on one knee. I've heard from Lord Kazan that we will be subjugating the ogres in the fortress of the abyss. I see. So her change was because of Kazan. Because of that our 4 treasures will be necessary. Please make use of them. In the past, she treated me as her equal due to the alliance, but now, she's acting like a servant. I will definitely take back the fortress of the abyss. Lend me your power, Narsa. As you will. With this, Ganra officially came under my rule. Volume 1, Chapter 70. The Fire God's Child. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race. Goblin level. 15 class. Lord, Horde Chief. Possessed skills. Ruler of the Horde, Insurgent will, Overpowering Howl, Swordsmanship B+, Insatiable Desire, King's Soul, Ruler's Wisdom I, Eyes of the Blue Snake, Dance at Death's Border, Red Snake's Eye, Magic Manipulation, Soul of a Crazed Warrior, Third Impact, the Third Chant, Instinct, Ruler's Wisdom II, Divine Protection. Goddess of the Underworld Attributes. Darkness, Death Subordinate Beasts. High Kobold Hesu, LV1, Gastra, LV20, Cynthia, LV20, Orc King Bui, LV36, Alyahalia, I have a request. Before we take over the fortress of the abyss, I need Alyahalia to do me a favor. No need to be reserved. So long as you give the order, I will ride even to the gates of hell. Alyahalia laughed heartily, and I wryly smiled in return. I'd like to ask for a rider. Beast. I want to give it to a goblin living in the eastern GI village. Alyahalia's brows rose up as soon as he heard the contents of my request. It's a difficult request, I'm sure. After all, for the Parajua goblins, they are given one rider. Beast from birth until death. Those beasts are their pride, as well as their other half. So of course, it's only natural for him to feel some resistance toward me wanting to send out one of those black tigers as a gift. What kind of goblin is that person you're referring to? A goblin who's lost an arm and a leg for my sake. I wish to reward him. Can a goblin who's lost an arm and a leg even ride a black tiger? Amongst my subordinates, there is no goblin more loyal than he. So I wish to show my sincerity. It's the request of the king, so I will comply. As Alyahalia bowed and withdrew from my presence, I thought about the east. Giga, Reshia, I'll return soon. In the sinful and lush forest of the demi-humans, were elves whose ears were shortened to half their natural length, and a collar around their necks that compelled them to subordination. As a slave who's been bought, she had no rights as a person. Selina, from this day forth, this gentleman shall be your master. What's the matter? Aren't you going to show your gratitude? At the slave trader's voice, the elf, Selina, served upon her new master with fear. My name is Selina, master, she said. Thank you for purchasing me. Selina's voice shook as she spoke, but Jean only quietly nodded, satisfied. He was beautiful for a human. And there was a cruelty in his eyes that he couldn't hide even if he wished. In fact, even his smile was cruel. I bought a good one. Hey, Selina. Why don't you go show me a bit of your power? Jean yelled. Selina's body shook, then she focused her ether on her ears. Blessed wind of the forest serenade, she closed her eyes and folded her hands as if she were praying. Seeing that, Jean's lips twisted into a lewd smile. 3 kilometers from here is a carriage and some adventurers in the middle of a quarrel. Oh. Jean's lips twisted. Can you confirm this? Of course, sir. The slave trader replied as he sheepishly rubbed his hands. He was clearly trying to suck up to Jean, but Jean didn't spare him a single glance. His gaze was completely fixated on Selina. If it's true, then I'll buy some other slaves as well. Thank you, master. The slave trader suddenly prostrated himself at those words, and Jean nodded, satisfied. In the end, Jean bought 3 slaves all in all. Selina, the elf who has received the divine protection of the wind. And the 2 battle slave siblings. Slaves meant for battle. Yoshu and Shumea. With this, Jean Marlin finally managed to acquire his pawns. In King Ashtel's kingdom, the most prosperous city of all was none other than the capital. Trade of goods is the city's main function, so wealth is of course expected. But at the same time, it is also because of that quarrels frequently break out in the city. As a result, the ones responsible for maintaining the public order are the Imperial Guards, who are directly under King Ashtal. The Imperial Guards are a front-line battalion formed with only the purpose of protecting the king and the area around him. Other than them, there is also the Order of the Knights who is responsible for foreign expeditions. One of the members of the Imperial Guards, Yuza, was currently cursing his luck. Before him was a magnificent carriage fallen on its side, surrounded by a group of stern men. Although now in tatters, they were dressed in armor meant for combat. And from the atmosphere about them, especially with how much they've used their armor, it was clear that they were no greenhorns. Facing the stern men was a noble standing in front of the carriage. He was a noble from out in the sticks, and he spoke loudly. His guards gathered around him, seemingly forming a wall with their bodies to protect him. It was a quarrel between a noble and a group of adventurers. It didn't take long for a crowd to gather around the noble and the adventurers, eager to watch the development of this seemingly amusing spectacle. Master Yuza, what's the master? A lesser soldier asked Yuza, and spontaneously, Yuza clicked his tongue. Isn't it obvious? I don't understand what's going on, he snapped. Ah, in that case, I can explain since I saw what happened. One of the adventurers from that group jumped in front of the carriage to save a child. Hearing of Yuza's plight, the wife of a commoner explained what happened with a no-it-all face. Yuza glared at her. He didn't really mean to think of her goodwill as unnecessary, but intervening now might be too late. After all, it's already turned into such a big commotion. The noble needs to save his face, and the adventurers make a living from their reputation. There's no way either side would willingly step down. Damn it. Why did this have to happen while I was on patrol? Sighing, he cursed the gods despite being an unbeliever. But then a voice suddenly called out from the crowd of onlookers. Making a ruckus in the capital, have you no fear of King Ashtel's power? That man forcefully squeezed through the crowds, leading his subordinate imperial guards to the scene. In any case, the first thing that needs to be done was to disperse the crowd. For an imperial guard to come at a time like this. Not to mention, an imperial guard with a standing high enough to lead other high-ranked imperial guards. It was indeed so perfectly timed that it made one feel proud. Yuza couldn't help but mockingly laugh when he saw his superior, but as they approached, he fixed himself up, and acted appropriately. Disperse the crowds. This isn't a show. To others, his vigilance looked like the sort of pride a member of the Imperial Guards would have. But in truth, his stomach was actually aching. Still, he dispersed the complaining crowd, and then he went back to the people. Question. You dare cause trouble in the king's roads? The first to answer was the plump noble from the sticks who went on, tattling repugnantly about the adventurers. Enough, you're all coming with us to the office. I'll hear whatever you have to say then. All men, move. The angry noble and the relatively calm adventurers were all escorted by different imperial guards to the office. As for the carriage, it was left to the lesser soldiers. The office of the imperial guards. The people. Question were all pushed into a place that's colloquially referred to as a pigsty. Yo, Yuza. You sure like to bring back trouble whenever you go out, huh? His fellow guard teased him, but Yuza was focused on confirming the identity of everyone involved. Lord Vane, a baron from the north. Damn it, what the hell is a noble from all the way out in the sticks doing here? He even caused me trouble. Yuza's bursting emotions overflowed as he took a bite out of the hard bread in his hands. As for the adventurers. Blood oath of the Flying Swallow clan. Oi, you're kidding, right? Blood oaths clans are a kind of group amongst adventurers. There are some groups that form for the sake of completing a certain request, but if it's only temporary, that's only a party. Clans are groups that form with the intention of lasting a long time. As for the guild, that is simply a body that acts as a hub for the adventurers to find work. From the innumerable clans that exist, the strongest ones amongst them have become a status. And the blood oath of the Flying Swallow is precisely one of those powerful clans. The Herculean, Wyatt, the Wand of Destruction, Bellin, and the Mage Killer, Mill. They're all big names. After confirming everyone's identity, Imperial Guard, Yuza, heaved a sigh of relief. Adventuring is an occupation similar to acting. An adventurer rises up the ranks by his own ability. And as he does, he becomes more and more renowned. In these people's case, because they are so exceptional, they have been given an appropriate second name. Receiving a second name isn't something normal. Yet despite that, 3 of the adventurers had a second name. That in itself shows just how much power the blood oath of the Flying Swallow has. Clans this big don't operate just within one country. In fact, he's never even heard of them having a headquarters here, showing just how prestigious of an organization they are. So of course, there was no reason to doubt them. Hey, Yuza. Without intending to, Yuza fell into a deep thought, and his fellow Imperial Guard had to snap him back. What, you're noisy. It's the holy night of the storm. What are you panicking for? Is that how an Imperial Guard should act? An Imperial Guard should always remain calm. Isn't that right? Goblin of the Storm is in front of the office. What did you say? The hero adventurer, Goblin. Who would have thought such dangerous figure would actually come to this pigsty? Just what did he come here for? In a panic, Yuza bolted out of the office, and Goblin met him outside with a dignified appearance. I hear my guests have caused you some trouble. Are you talking about the blood swallow? Right. I went out of my way to ask the guild to contact them, but it seems they ended up loitering around, so I hurriedly came here to pick them up. Seeing Gullen's panicked appearance as he politely spoke brought a headache to Yuza. We haven't finished the papers yet, so you'll have to wait until then. Oh. So you plan to make me wait here? Gritting his teeth, Yuza turned his back on Gullen and went back inside the office. Damn it. Just you watch, I'll make you wait until the very last minute. For those who maintain the public order, adventurers that cause problems are nothing but eyesores. The reason behind the incident today is because of the adventurers' exceptional skills and their bad relation with the nobles. The ones who put in the request, and the ones who carry them out. Although it's generally thought that the two sides having good relations is good, being involved with each other also brings some disadvantages along with the advantages. After all, nobles are the sort of people that can't owe up to their mistakes, while adventurers, who risk their lives to make a living, can easily become a threat. What's the matter? Asked Yuza's fellow Imperial Guards who handed him the documents. But his blood having rushed to his head, Yuza did the papers all over again. Around that time though, someone called out to him. It was his superior, a chief of the Imperial Guards. All the papers have been completed. Hurry up and have them go home. Ha! But what? His superior grabbed his collar as he yelled at him. Release them now. This is an order. Yes, going against his superior's order was impossible, so he had no choice but to immediately dismiss the adventurers from the pigsty. Goblin of the Storm, was that your doing? Asked the Herculean, Wyatt. Well, it was me who asked you to come after all. Wouldn't it be cruel of me not to help you out? It seems we've caused you some trouble, said the Wand of Destruction, Bellin. The inn, quietly whispered the mage killer, Mill. Having acquired some powerful helpers, Goblin laughed heartily. Name. Selena race. Elf level. 32 occupation. Slave possessed skills. Archery C+, voice of the forest, magic manipulation, whispers of the wind, breath of the wind god, denizen of the forest divine protection. Wind god attributes. Wind abnormal status. Because of the collar of subordination your physical abilities have fallen 30% name. Yosha race. Human level. 46 occupation. Battle slave possessed skills. Swordsmanship C+, provoke, illusion shield, skill of experience, shield rush, flame blade divine protection. Flame god attributes. Fire abnormal status. Because of the collar of subordination your physical abilities have fallen 30% name. Shumea race. Human level. 67 occupation. Battle slave possessed skills. Spearmanship C+, giant swing, triple thrust, quick thrust, parry, pinwheel divine protection. Flame god attributes. Fire abnormal status. Because of the collar of subordination your physical abilities have fallen 30%. Volume 1, Chapter 71. The Invaders, Part 1, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Race. Goblin level. 15 class. Lord, Horde Chief possessed skills. Ruler of the Horde, Insurgent will, overpowering howl, swordsmanship B+, insatiable desire, King's soul, ruler's wisdom I, eyes of the blue snake, dance at death's border, red snake's eye, magic manipulation, soul of a crazed warrior, third impact, the third chant, instinct, ruler's wisdom 2, divine protection. Goddess of the underworld attributes darkness, death subordinate beasts. High Kobold Jesu, LV1, Gastra, LV20, Cynthia, LV20, Orc King Bui, LV36, the rumbling wind blew from the dark hole. From that true darkness in which not even goblins could see. The black wind that blew was clad in darkness. Like a tunnel stretching back to the womb of the mother, its walls were tepid like the wind. So this is the path leading to the fortress of the abyss, I muttered. Scared, king. The druid, Gi-za, teased. My chest is pounding, I fearlessly smiled back. Beyond the boundless memories, in that sea of hazy fragments that knew not of life as a grown man, I recall looking into the darkness and my heart pounding. It was a stormy night then, the showering rain beating into the windows. I didn't know why, but at the time, it felt like something would happen. Something that would overturn all common sense. I quivered as fear took me, though I also yearned for it. I wanted to know what exactly that something was. Nothing could describe the clash of emotions that stirred within me then. So the king's chest is pounding, I see. As expected of our king, Gi-za remarked, and the other goblins nodded in agreement. We can't be careless, Yellow said, speaking in Kazan's place. Indeed, the ogres may be few in number, but that goes to show just how strong they are. The strongest amongst the four chief, Rashka of Gadga, twisted his face as he said those words. Pessimism won't lead us anywhere, Alyahalia remarked as the black tiger he sat upon growled. It's still better than some old guy obsessed with fighting, Rashka said back. Power goes hand in hand with long life. I just happen to be strong, Alyahalia sourly replied. As the two shot back and forth in their banter, the princess of Ganra, Narsa, interjected. Either way, the battle will surely be difficult, she said. Fear not, I will protect you, my chief, the first shooter Gadiata, Gilmi, said. Bah, you're being overprotective, Gi-go Amatsuki, the blessed of the sword god, argued. King, let's go. There won't be any problems, said the stealthy Gig. You're all fine, but this one here's plenty scared, the beast warrior, Gi, gloomily said as he caressed his two-headed ostrich double head. Shall we go then? Goblins of the tribes, at my lead. I walked ahead, in front of the horde, leading with Gigi and the stealthy Gig by my side. Of course, the druid, Gi-za was also with me. Protecting the back was the blessed of the sword god, Gi-go Amatsuki. His hand was always on his sword, his eyes darting to and fro the surroundings, ready to strike at the slightest hint of danger. The goblins from Gi village all took their positions, not one of them needed instruction. They already knew what needed to be done. The need for instructions would only delay them, leaving them incapable of displaying their full potential. So, with them now able to naturally assume their optimal positions, their strength could be fully realized. We have grown. Not just in knowledge, but also in experience. And with that growth, we took a step into the dark hole, to the path leading deep into the fortress of the abyss. As for the others, they went up outside to watch the entrance of the fortress of the abyss. We may be at the front lines, but we couldn't just neglect our backs. The ogres will probably go up if we drive them out. There's also the possibility of our villages getting attacked. All of our fighting force is focused here. So, at the very least, we need someone to stop the ogres if they manage to reach the upper floors and go outside. For that I've assigned the skilled leader, Gi-gu Verbena, to lead the remaining goblins above ground and monitor the fortress of the abyss. The young chief of Parajua, Hal, is serving as his adjutant to help him lead. After I'd prepared everything, I delved deep into the fortress of the abyss with the elite amongst the goblins. After 20 minutes of walking, Kazan tugged on my arms. We'll be there shortly, Yellow said, speaking in Kazan's place. No enemies have appeared so far. Until now we've just been walking down this slope. But not being able to see is really troublesome. As we continued to descend, a dazzling light in the shape of a rectangle appeared before us. That must be the entrance, I said. As that light appeared within the pitch black of the darkness, we walked toward it, and Gigi and Gig suddenly let out a resounding gulp. The light we went through was none other than the entrance to the fortress. When we went through it, the surrounding world completely changed. Statues made of smooth and seemingly precious, black stones polished to the brim, could be seen lined up. These statues resembled the ones back in Altesia's realm. The ceiling reached high above, and the corridors were wide enough to fit 10 goblins effortlessly. A true castle, Giza muttered in reverence. I agree, this fortress is certainly something. Now then. Where could the ogres be? Wielding the iron second over my shoulders, I asked that question to Kazan. At my words, she looked around restlessly, then she pointed to the right. Giza, can you use your skills? I asked. All eyes gathered on him. Supposedly, only those who've gathered the 4 treasures can use skills, and everyone else will be shackled. In Giza's case, his skill is his ability to magically control the wind. No one has actually gathered all 4 treasures until now, so we can't say for sure how large the area of effect is. There doesn't seem to be any problems. Giza turned his wrist, then he chanted. The wind bird scythe sings. Slash, a blade of wind scraped off a part of the ground before scattering into fragments and disappearing. I see. With that I also tried using the. I tried to see Giza's status, but as expected, it didn't work. However, the sensation was the same as always. There doesn't seem to be any problems. Let's go. As everyone nodded, we continued into the fortress. From here on we'll be entering the forest. When they heard their master's voice, the man renowned as the Iron Arm Knight, they all immediately straightened their backs. These men are all 2nd or 3rd sons, taken from some nearby village. The Iron Arm Knight, Goen Ranid, who was also the feudal lord in this region, took these men when they were still young and raised them to become his private army. This group of young soldiers number 400 all in all. That number also includes the reinforcement, but all of them are able to fight. Any questions? Goen asked. With that perfectly combed down silver hair of his that was almost white, and that splendid mustache, Goen did not look like he was about to enter the forest of darkness. In fact, if he said they were about to join the king for dinner, anyone would believe him. Let us be on our way then. That cold gaze of his shot toward the uninhabited region. Fitting of being the oldest amongst the holy knights, Iron Arm Goen majestically entered the forest. There are many routes to enter the forest. One method is to use the road. After all, while the forest might be beyond the borders of civilization, it still has its riches. Food, herbs, or ingredients from hunting monsters. People who yearn for this wealth embrace the danger and come here to this forest. Such people tread down the land, creating a road free from fallen trees and branches. There are many such routes in Goen's region. A second method is to use an unexplored route. This method is much rougher compared to the first, but it does allow one to create a road as one pleases. There may be a restriction on the forest, but it's not like there are poisonous plants littered all over the place. The trees and plants are just naturally growing densely, so anyone can enter if they want. This method is much better for searching the forest rather than bothering to go out to use road a considerable distance out of one's way. The third method is through the help of the elves. As inhabitants of the forest, the elves have their own peculiar way of entering. Often known as the Elven Road, the elves are able to instantly traverse the forest through the opening of another dimension. However, even the elves themselves take a risk of ending up somewhere unexpected, so it's imperative that they know full well where the entrances and exits are. In any case, it's not a method that humans could use. The iron arm Goen steadily used the first method. The Storm Knight Gullen used the second method to accommodate in lieu of the adventurer spirit. And Jean, who managed to acquire some elven slaves, used the third method. Now, what do we have here? Playing with his long hair, a sophisticated sword hilt in his hands, Jean's lips curved into a twisted smile. In front of him was a horde of beast men. A half-man half-horse, holding a sword over its shoulders, a centaur. A spider with human legs and the body of a human, Arachne. And a groaning half-wolf half-man, bearing its fangs, a werewolf. Jean and his slaves found themselves right in the middle of those three beast men when they exited the elven road. After looking around him, Jean came to a conclusion. This must be a village of beastmen. Master Jean, the two battle slaves anxiously voiced out. Don't worry, this is just a rare opportunity to hunt ourselves some beast men. If anything, you should be delighted. The elf slave aside, the two human slaves didn't find it particularly amusing to find themselves surrounded by a horde of beast men. They might not like their master, but they were all in one boat. They have no choice but to fight. In contrast, the elf, Selena, was secretly happy that the elven road reached a beastmen village. Who knows? They might just be able to save her. She couldn't voice that out, but her heart held on to that sliver of hope. Elves and beastmen get along well. Or at the very least, much better than with humans. Surely, with this many beastmen, even her master, Jean, despite being a holy knight, shouldn't be able to come out alive, right? And if this whole thing were to turn to negotiations, then she might just be able to intervene and free herself. Filled with hope as she looked in front of her, the centaur spoke. What did you come here for, human? With his youth, that lean body of his, and that impressive display of him thrusting his spear, that centaur was truly like a brave warrior. An accident. I had this girl use her power, but our luck was bad, and we ended up in the wrong place. Jean pulled on the chains as he said that, causing Selena to lightly groan. You enslaved an elf. Seeing her half-cut ears, the centaur opened his eyes in disbelief, then he let out a furious roar. You dare disgrace us, the denizens of the forest. Release her, now. I paid money for this girl, so if you want her, pay up, Jean chuckled. There was little sense of danger in his eyes, and his mouth was as sarcastic as ever. His tongue even slipped out of his mouth as it licked his lips. Don't fuck with me. Negotiations are off then. As the centaur roared, he charged toward Jean. That charge of his was enough to send even a double head flying, but Jean only calmly unsheathed his beloved rapier. Faster than lightning fire. Jean uttered those words with love. Immediately after, the centaur, who was raising up a storm of dust as it ferociously charged toward him, fell. Everyone but Jean was in disbelief. I've yet to introduce myself. I am Jean Marlin, the knight said to be quick as thunder, the Thunder Knight. Also, a member of the superior human race. It's a pleasure to meet you. That smile that floated up Jean's lips was full of ecstasy. Every word that uttered out of those lips painted over the hope in Selena's chest, dyeing it in despair. That day, one of the many villages of the beastmen in the Forest of Darkness was annihilated. Name: Jean Marlin. Race: human. Level: 87. Occupation: Holy Knight, possessed skills: Thunder Knight. Magic manipulation, rapier arts A+, innate talent, evil snake eye, 100. Demon slay, fire god's blessing, thunder god's blessing, instant kill, thrust, sadism divine protection. Fire god, thunder god attributes. Fire, electricity equipment. Faster than thunder, fire, subordinates. Slave Selena, battle slave Shumea, battle slave Yoshu. Author's note. Let's talk about the setting. About the weapons, there are 4 main tiers. If you just want lots of weapons, there's the forged tier. If you want a slightly better weapon, there's the famed blade tier. Weapons blessed by the spirits or the gods, ancient tier. Weapons made by the gods, the god, age tier or the god tier. Alchemy and famed blade tiers don't need magic power. But making weapons starting from the artifact tier are quite difficult, so in order to make borrowing the power of the spirits easier, spirit characters, spell, or god, age/ancient characters, spell, are engraved into them. If more power is desired, then sealing a spirit or a god inside the weapon becomes a necessity. A god or a spirit can also naturally possess a weapon after using one time for a long time. The weapon gene is using is ancient tier. Volume 1, Chapter 72. The Invaders, Part 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Race. Goblin level. 15 class. Lord, Horde Chief possessed skills. Ruler of the Horde, Insurgent Will, Overpowering Howl, Swordsmanship B+, Insatiable Desire, King's Soul, Ruler's Wisdom I, Eyes of the Blue Snake, Dance at Death's Border, Red Snake's Eye, Magic Manipulation, Soul of a Crazed Warrior, Third Impact, the Third Chant, Instinct, Ruler's Wisdom II, Divine Protection. Goddess of the Underworld Attributes. Darkness, Subordinate Beasts. Death High Kobold Hesu, LV1, Gastra, LV20, Cynthia, LV20, Orc King Bui, LV36, a giant axe as heavy as a rock swung. That axe landed right in front of me as it crushed the ground. OOOU. Its hair was freely grown out. Its bulging muscles were like rocks. Its body was dyed in black. And that axe of it which swung with no regard for one's limits was nothing short of terrifying. The bits of rocks that scattered from impact grazed by my skin. After Kazan led us to look for the ogres, we stumbled upon an ogre who was walking around the fortress. We attacked it first, but who would have thought it would be so fearsome? Every single one of the goblins under me are rare. Class. That's more than enough power for a goblin to become a horde chief. But before this ogre, these rare classes are no more than newborns. The two goblins who are relatively weaker at attacking, the stealthy GIG and the beast warrior GIGI, were completely helpless against the ogre. They couldn't make even a dent against its skin, so they had no choice but to grit their teeth and watch from the sidelines. Go Amatsuki, on the other hand, was only lightly hurt. As a blessed of the sword god, he is also influenced by him. The sharpness of his sword is unlike any other. So, in a flash, he slipped through the legs of the ogre, and lopped off its toes. He used the entirety of its curved blade, just like a perfectly executed dance. That entire performance was something that could only be attained after removing every unnecessary movement. The pinnacle of swordsmanship. I was stupefied when I saw that, but in the end, Go 2 could only distance himself from that towering mass that was hard as a rock. And when he looked at his sword, he clicked his tongue. His sword could no longer be used. That was the result of trying to force his way through. The skin of the ogre was just too hard, so when a cutting object like a sword was forcefully used to cut it, the sword dulled. A result of his inexperience. Stupid. Unsheathing his other sword, he entered the fray once more. The four tribal chiefs were the ones controlling the situation. The arrow entangles, fair ring arrow, Princess Narsa of Ganrat drew the meteor bow by Unii bow. No arrow was drawn, only magic, out of which formed the shape of an arrow and shot out toward the ogre. It was an attack aimed at the feet, so the ogre didn't care. Look here. The first shooter Gadiata, Gilmy, shot with unparalleled accuracy toward the ogre's eye. That arrow came flying at almost the same time as Narsa's arrow did. The ogre was forced to cover its eyes. It reacted just as an animal would, but Alyahalia was already galloping toward it. My spear shall penetrate all creation. Lightning lance, the ancient words on the curved spear of the snake Naga lance shone as Alyahalia kicked at the stomach of his beloved black tiger, Jirul. As Alyahalia charged toward the ogre, Princess Narsa's attack pierced through the feet of the ogre, bringing it down to its knees. The rage of losing his eye coursed through Rashka as he smashed his dazzling black club against the ogre. The choker of Rathvidal amulet mercilessly bit down Rashka's skin, and Rashka's muscles swelled as much as it bore. Clad me in violence as dignity. Ra Jillian. That black light slammed directly onto the ogre's head. At the same time, that black light executed the fundamentals of slash, winding up a violent storm as it sent the ogre's head flying. The ferocity of that attack made even me shiver. I was never hit when we were fighting, but if by chance even a single one of those landed, my whole upper half would have probably been blown away. After losing its head, the ogre's body fell. Finally managed to take one down, Rashka whispered. Indeed. According to the beast warrior, Gigi, there are 4 just in this area. Ogres don't normally come in groups unless they have a leader, Yellow said. Giant demon ogre lord, Gi-za muttered. Ogre lord and its subordinate ogres. I don't know how many there are, but they're undoubtedly my strongest enemy yet. At the sound of rustling iron, a sword nonchalantly swung against the prey in front, and the double-headed ostrich was cut cleanly in 2. Piece of cake. 10 adventurers were gathered just as Golan had requested. There should have been more, but after picking out the members himself only 10 remained. Of the 10 gathered, 3 are renowned even within the blood oath of the Flying Swallow clan. The Herculean, Wyatt, the Wand of Destruction, Bellin, the Mage Killer, Mill. Then there's Hawkeye Fick and an ageless adventurer known as the Divine Hand, simple_tooltip content equals lit. Healing White Hands, / simple_tooltip. Literally an all-star team. Anyone who happened upon this group would be left wondering what fearsome evil they were about to face. But in truth, they gathered here merely for the sake of one girl. It was through the information network of the guild that these people were able to gather here today from all over the world. And it is this very ability that sets adventurers apart from non-humans. Humanity's ability to organize itself is its greatest weapon. And neither elf nor goblin nor demi-human can hold a candle to it. 3 Carols, simple_tooltip content equals apparently a fictional measurement of sort. I translated it before to km, but I later found out that the spelling is intended. And yes, it should be their world's equivalent to km. /simple_tooltip, to the right. Orcs. Hawkeye said as he set off to explore. Fick, why don't you spend your time looking for the saint instead of orcs? Jested an old friend of his. Because there's no point. Sleeping princesses always sleep at the deepest part of the forest, right? Fick wryly smiled. It's just a bunch of orcs, but let's treat ourselves to some fun, shall we? Golan said. The ferocity of the forest's denizens is embedded deep within every adventurer's soul. That rings all the more true for they who have come to be called the best. Not one of them is free of it. The loss of a friend, the loss of a successor. Every single one of them has gone through that baptism. And it is precisely because of that Golan doesn't believe the saint could actually still be alive. As far as he's concerned, a job like this is just a rare opportunity to let loose. Aren't we going to look for the saint? Asked the magic killer, Mill. Mage killer, Mill Dora, of the Flying Swallow. Golan muttered. There was a hint of threat in those words. Weren't you listening? I said go hunt those orcs. I was told the job would be to rescue the saint, replied Mill, straight-faced, as the talons on her arms grazed against each other and her eyes narrowed, much like a bird about to dive for its prey. With her breath steady she was clearly ready to fight. An advance should have been paid. I'm saying the mission is different. Golan reached for that giant sword on his back. Hey, either way, why don't you two put down your arms first? The Herculean Wyatt nimbly slipped in between the two. That huge body of his with a shield on his back easily towered over them. Mill, you know it's not like Golan is saying we won't be looking for the saint anymore. If a human lost his way in the forest, it's only a given that monsters would be the most suspicious, right? Goblins, orcs, giant spider. There are many man-eating monsters lurking in the forest. So, it's wisest to go for these guys first. You understand, right, Mill? Wyatt tried to explain, but Mill only snorted as she turned away. And you too, Golan. Aren't you a grown-up? Not to mention you're the client this time, so why don't you try and be a bit more mature? Don't patronize me. Golan let go of his sword, and proceeded to lead the way. Seeing how the two reacted, Wyatt couldn't help but chuckle to himself. Meanwhile, Golan led his army of 400 and steadily cut down the forest to create a road. Gradually, that small road grew bigger and bigger until it was finally big enough for humans to pass through. Golan used the saint as a pretense to expand his own territory. And he gathered all the riches he could from the land as he proceeded. Although Golan's land was right next to the forest, plundering the forest's riches is still a dangerous task. In order to safely plunder it, he must first expand his own territory. Light shone through the forest. Monsters fell one after another as a world of humans was slowly being built. The ambitious Iron-Armed Knight is slowly walking down the path of conquest. Milord, there seem to be some kobolds 40 meters ahead. Get rid of them if they get in the way. Kobolds can call other monsters, so, be careful. Yes, milord. As the young soldier heartily replied, Golan looked toward the forest, his scheming gaze piercing deep into its darkness. Name. Golan Ranid Race. Human level. 90 Job. Saint Knight, Iron-Armed Knight, Feudal Lord possessed skills. Axe Mastery B+, Swordsmanship B+, Spearmanship A, Archery B+, Leadership A, Unlimited Experience, Battle. Scarred Knight, Thousand Demon Slayer, Creator's Blessing, Seeker of the Martial God, Martial Barrier Divine Protection None. Name. Golan Rifneen Race. Human level. 88 Job Holy Knight, Storm Knight, Traveler possessed skills. Strong Arm, Swordsmanship A, Charisma, Daredevil, Frenzied Sword, Soul of a Crazed Warrior, Raging Greed, 100. Demon Slayer, Fire God's Blessing, Rebellious Divine Protection. Fire God Attributes. Flame, Blue Thunder, Great Equipment Sword. Volume 1, Chapter 73. Trap. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race. Goblin level. 15 Class. Lord, Horde Chief possessed skills. Ruler of the Horde, Insurgent Will, Overpowering Howl, Swordsmanship B+, Insatiable Desire, King's Soul, Ruler's Wisdom I, Eyes of the Blue Snake, Dance at Death's Border, Red Snake's Eye, Magic Manipulation, Soul of a Crazed Warrior, Third Impact, the Third Chant, Instinct, Ruler's Wisdom II, Divine Protection Goddess of the Underworld Attributes Darkness, Death Subordinate Beasts. High Kobold Hesu, LV1, Gastra, LV20, Cynthia, LV20, Orc King Bui, LV36, the wind bellowed with the howls. And all sounds vanished as the ogre swung its axe to leave a fissure upon its wake. G-U-R-U-R-U-A. G-U-U-O. I bellowed back with my, but it was drowned out by the enemy's own cries. Wielding Iron Second, I fended off the second swing of that rock-like axe. My hands went numb from that, but I continued to attack the ogre. Aided by, my sword drew an arc in the air as it went for the ogre's arm. In that same moment, I tried to use, but it failed. Snapping my tongue, I cursed at the viciousness of the traps in this fortress. Annoying. And just when I thought my great sword would sever the ogre's arm, it suddenly used those brutish muscles of it to forcefully push its arm until the base of my sword. I managed to cut it off in the end, but I was sent flying in exchange. I slid on the ground and tumbled countless times before finally stopping. I desperately clung to keep awake and endure the pain. The enemy isn't some greenhorn who'd falter just from something like this. As soon as I brought my head up, the ogre's fist was there waiting for me. Enraged by the pain, that fist shot out toward me, aiming to kill me. I twisted my body in response, and received it with my blade. The impact was horrifying. It was like getting hit by a truck, and I lost all feeling in my arms. Blood gushed out of the ogre's hands, but it raised its fist again without a hint of concern for itself. Damn it! Are you numb of pain, monster? Turn me into a blade, enchant. I tried to wrap my sword in flames, but it failed. I only wasted my breath. Calm down. I haven't lost yet. I forced strength into my two numb arms. And gradually, I managed to get back feeling in this monstrous body of mine. Then I bolted off for the ogre's chest. Blood spurted, and the faint cries of the ogre fell upon my ears, but still, I ran for it. I clung on to that faint hope for victory only to be sent flying by the ogre's knees. Activated, and my hands moved by itself to use my great sword as a shield. But the force was too great, and my sword was flicked away into a wall. It's not a pretty situation, but I'm still alive. Traces of blood could be seen on the floor where my body slid, but I yet breathe. Goo, ha, I tried to stand up, but the aftershock made me spew my guts. Blood spurted out of my mouth, and my strength left me. Only my eyes could follow the ogre. If that thing comes at me now, it won't be pretty, but... The ogre isn't looking any better itself. Both of its arms are hanging down, limp. It cries out to the heavens, but those arms won't be coming back, and my sword is. With victory dangling right before me, I look for my sword. I see it half buried into a wall. I clench my fists. If I don't have a weapon, then I'll just turn this body into one. Guurua. We're both unarmed, the conditions have been met. Activates. And because of the damage I've received, stage 2 activates. My muscles bulge, my arms contract, and my killing intent rages. The ogre must have felt it because it stopped cursing the heavens to look at me. It opens its massive mouth, it bellows out a roar, and I feel my legs freeze under me. So, I bellow back in response. Guurua. To hell with skills. We kick ourselves off the ground. I raise my fists, and the ogre opens its mouth. The distance between us shrinks, and that wide opened mouth of it is hellbent on chewing every bit of me. The ogre lowered its head, and our paths crossed. That I won't be defeated. As our paths crossed, I brought down my fist, slamming it right into its head. The crunching sound of bones impacting and flesh tearing filled my ears. My bulging muscles threw up blood, and I grit my teeth in pain. Guurua. But I didn't falter. I slammed my fists down the ogre's head, and I crushed that ugly thing like a watermelon. And with that, life left the ogre, and it was no more. An arm for a life. This right arm won't be moving anytime soon. That's pretty bad, actually. Since there's still the ogre lord after this. But then, so what? I can't stop here. Even if the only thing pushing me is this blazing fire in my chest. I have to win. For their sake too. For those who are desperately fighting yet. Regret fills me whenever I think about it. Did I really make the right choice? Was there really no other way? No, there's no point thinking about that anymore. It might be because we somehow managed to defeat an ogre while following Kazan that we let our guard up. Yes, it was probably because of that we fell into a trap. When we exited the corridors, we found ourselves in a spacious room, and rocks fell on us from above. Most likely, a trap set by the ogres. Kazan was sure there wasn't anything like that before, so I ordered my men to search the area. A decision that would cause us to split up. For one of the stone pillars that reached up to a second story would fall down. It's falling. Everyone jumped at my warning, but then the whole place caved in. At least, I managed to dodge, I thought. Then I called out to my men. Are you safe? Gi za. Gi go. That mountain of rubble blocked my vision. Gi. Gilmy. Rashka. I called their names one after another, but the wall of rubble before me, that wall of despair, made sure I couldn't cross. Kuzan. Alyahalia. Narsa. Gig. I hit it again and again as I called out their names, but no one responded. Gradually, resignation painted my heart, but at the sound of a lord's voice, that feeling was blown away. King, go without us. It was Gi za. The howls of an ogre could be heard as soon as he said those words. My men are fighting on the other side of this wall. They are fighting. In a war I can't reach. They're fighting, for me. I grit my teeth. If only I could turn my fury into power. I wouldn't spare a second thought to crush to this wall. I'm going ahead. I will defeat the ogre lord. The ogres are gathering even though they're not the sort to form hordes. If I defeat the ogre lord, then they might just turn against each other. As I stifled the impatience and anger within me, I ran. Statues of demons lined up in a dark room. Some were shaped like men and some like snakes. They stood around a lone woman who was sat upon a throne like a king. A snow-white toga was wrapped around her, and in front of her was a magic mirror upon which the detested and beloved world of the living reflected. And in that world was a certain goblin. Ah, he's going, my beloved child. Her beautiful lips spoke those words almost in a sigh. A hint of love could be felt from them. Yes, that was most likely the love of a mother. But you should hurry. Her pair of golden eyes grew sharper at those words, and with a thought the image on the magic mirror changed to several search teams, hunting teams led by 3 peculiar humans. Each one of them possessed some strange power. They were none other than the vanguards of the gods, the Byunii. A smile floated up her lips as she pushed her sky-blue hair back. I can never get tired of you, boy. Chaos and destruction follow you wherever you go. Even though the 3rd daughter of Destinerio has yet to interfere. The snakes by her feet could feel her joy, and they looked up to her and tilted their heads. Your power has been sealed, your weapon taken. Your people are on the other side of the wall with no way out, your body is covered in wounds, and up ahead is an ogre lord, but you know. I bet on you. There's no way he could have heard those words, but when the magic mirror showed his figure, it seemed to reach him. He who possesses the same noble and strong soul that she herself once possessed. Should you come here half-heartedly, your anguish, your agony, your sorrow, your everything shall become mine. Would the tears of your sorrow be sweet? Would its taste harmonize with the throes of your despair? And what of your face twisted by the humiliation of failing to protect those you wished to protect? A faint smile drew her lips as she caressed her flushed cheeks. Foo, I'm looking forward to it, boy. Do become stronger. The stronger you become, the more amusing it'll be. But, why is it that I'd rather watch you forever like this? The fallen goddess loved teasing him. She hoped he'd be able to overcome the trials set before him with that strong and noble soul of his. Though either way would suit her. In the realm of the dead where no man was, only the statues and the snakes watched over her. A pity, she thought, that they could only meet at the border of life and death. The goddess of the underworld peeked through the magic mirror again. Level has risen. 15. 24. Volume 1, Chapter 73.5. At the GI Village. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Name: Giga Rax Race. Goblin Level 89 Class. Noble, Guardian. Possessed skills: Spearmanship C+, Overpowering Howl, Omnivorous, Instant Kill, Adherent of the King, Spear Throwing, Warrior's Soul, Indomitable Soul, Insight. Attributes: None subordinate beasts. None abnormal because of the status artificial leg. Fighting prowess is down 30%, moo. Reshia groaned at the scene before her. A gift from the king had arrived just a while ago, and tidings say that the 4 tribes have joined under his banner. The campaign was a success. But that didn't matter, what was truly important was that thing before her. Gyuyuyuyu. Yuyuan. Cynthia and Gastra have been groaning ceaselessly from a distance a long while now. They didn't dare approach Reshia. Nu. Reshia looked again at the black tiger before her. This is a rider-beast that the king has sent for Lord Gi-ga. It is our Parajua tribe's black tiger. Please accept it. The goblin that came riding on that rider-beast politely bowed his head. He seemed to resemble those humans that loved horses, but a second look at the goblin's face would make anyone forget such thoughts. Lady Reshia, when Lily returned from her hunt, she noticed Reshia glaring at the rider-beast, deep wrinkles drawn upon her forehead. Panicking, she hurriedly walked up to Reshia. King, Elf.rg meanwhile, Giga, the one-armed one-legged goblin, was so overcome with emotion that he could not say a word past a groan. Reshia ill-humoredly nodded to the goblin's affections. Lily approached Reshia, unaware of that pressure that seemed to strike fear even in the heart of the rider-beast. For the meantime, I should try and get her away from it, she thought. Lady Reshia. Congratulations, Lord Gi-ga. As expected of our king. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. The beast warrior, Gi-da, the water magician, Gi-zo, the spearman, Gi-da, each and every single one of them congratulated Giga, while Reshia's countenance darkened and Lily's heart went pitter-patter. Lady Reshia. Lily turned Reshia around. Oh, you're back. It was her usual smile, Reshia's usual smile, but something was different. The king hasn't forgotten about Lord Gi-ga. This must be a reward for your loyalty, Lord Gi-ga. Our wounded comrades will be glad to hear of this. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. Reshia twitched for an instant, then in the next moment she froze. Gi-da's words hadn't escaped her, and her smile went as stiff as a doll on strings, leaving even Lily to freeze. It was then that it finally occurred to her why Reshia was acting this way. But that was only an understanding of the cause. And that by in itself was not enough to solve the problem at hand. Yet, be that as it may, she could not just stand idle either. For if this were to be handled poorly, not one person here would be getting off scot-free from the eruption of Reshia. Surely the king must, she could not stand the tense atmosphere, so she tried to say something. Surely the king must what? But Lily's poor attempt was only met by Reshia's cold voice. She was smiling, but that was exactly what made it terrifying. Lily shivered. Must be busy. Must be busy. At that moment, the sound of clicking seemed to have reached her ears. The freezing air from before had fully frozen over. This is bad, Lily thought, but it was too late. She had no way out. If she tried to forcefully change the direction of this conversation, Reshia will certainly erupt. I'm sure next time, but she can't give up, not until the end. Next time. But what about this time? Ah, that's not good, she realized. Why? Why don't I get anything? Those words were said with so much power that even the poor black tiger couldn't help but prostrate in fear. While Lily was trying to cheer Reshia up, Giga Rax was struggling to ride the rider-beast. He sat himself on the saddle and grabbed the reins, but no matter what he did, he could not clamp his tiger-steed hard enough because of his prosthetic leg. A little speed from the black tiger, and Giga would immediately find himself patting his back on the ground. But he did not give up. If the words of the messenger were to be trusted, then the king had boasted of his loyalty as the greatest amongst the goblins. If so, then there was no other choice. He had to respond to it, to the king's faith. He had to ride the black tiger. Day after day, hour after hour, Giga worked himself to the bone, trying to ride that black tiger. He fell, and many more times did he fall. But in time, those falls grew less and less. Impressed by his improvement, even the Parajua messenger couldn't help but become zealous at teaching. And they trained from morn till dusk, day after day. That'll be all for today, Lord Giga. I can still do more. Giga still couldn't ride with his spear, but he was proficient enough now that he could ride with one hand. No, we'll be riding in the evening tomorrow, so you should get some rest. All right. Giga affixed the reins to the black tiger's mouth and patted its head. Giuuu. The black tiger happily purred, and the messenger from Parajua went wide-eyed. Looks like you've gotten used to Haku already. It's because of your exceptional teaching, Lord Alashed. Alyahalia had sent his adjutant, Alashed, as messenger out of consideration for the Gi village. Being older than Hal, Alashed has much hunting experience under his belt. He may be a little worse at the spear, being only the third best spearman in the tribe, but with Alyahalia retiring, that third would soon be second. I was wondering what the boss was thinking when he sent me, but I think I understand now. What do you mean? The two goblins chatted as they led the black tiger to the village. He told me to see. With my own two eyes. The king of the East's loyal subject. The boss seems to be really serious about unifying the goblins under him. Alashed laughed at the puzzled Giga. Once I'm done with this mission, I'll be one of the elders. And of course, the boss would want me to give my opinion then. Is that necessary? What a hassle, Giga's face seemed to say. Alashed laughed even harder at that. Right, it's certainly a hassle. But to lead a tribe, that much is necessary. Our king is indeed great. But of course. And so, the two goblins returned to the village along with the setting sun. Name. Alashed race. Parajua goblin level. 70 class. Rare possessed skills. Mounted spearmanship, riding, spearmanship C+, leadership C+, charge, cooperation C+, beast heart, adjutant's knowledge, sixth sense attributes. None subordinate beasts. None beloved steed shu. Volume 1, Chapter 74. Danger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race Goblin. Level 24 class. Lord, Horde Chief possessed skills. Ruler of the Horde, Insurgent will, Overpowering Howl, Swordsmanship B+, Insatiable Desire, King's Soul, Ruler's Wisdom I, Eyes of the Blue Snake, Dance at Death's Border, Red Snake's Eye, Magic Manipulation, Soul of a Crazed Warrior, Third Impact, the Third Chant, Instinct, Ruler's Wisdom II, Divine Protection. Goddess of the Underworld Attributes. Darkness, Death Subordinate Beasts. High Cobalt Jesu, LV1, Gastra, LV20, Cynthia, LV20, Orc King Bui, LV36, in these long and dark halls, I stifle the impatience within me. Every breath I take is accompanied by pain. My lungs ache, blood trickles down my broken right arm. My strength is waning. I wish Recia was here. No, that's just my weakness talking. There's no point wishing for someone not here. What matters most now is that there's an enemy I have to defeat. I can regret and hurt as much later. I thrust my sword into the wall. It wasn't a height I could easily climb one-handed. Thanks to that I'm now weaponless. I had a short sword with me, but it's broken now. The ogre had broken it in one hit. The thickening stench of decay and miasma. The enemy is near. It's almost as if it's wrapped in it that it was chewing on bones and meat when it noticed me and stood up. Then it threw away the meat in its mouth, spitting the rest onto the ground. A giant door towered behind it. Its skin was brown like the rest of the ogre's, but its eyes were dyed in the color of blood. In its hand was a giant axe that looked to have been shaved out of a boulder, and it wore no armor save for a loincloth around its waist. But with the bulging muscles that covered it, that was more than enough to make it seem more indomitable than an impenetrable fortress. Those red eyes stared at me. G-o-u-u-u-o-u. Then it bellowed out a great howl that shook everything in the room. It was elated to see me, though I couldn't say the same for myself. My body felt like it had sunk to the bottom of the ocean, and I couldn't move. Even breathing was difficult. BDNVL.M-GRUAAA. I already know that doesn't work, this is just to calm my own nerves. In other words, that wasn't really a skill but a mere howl. I readied myself. This might be my last. An enemy naturally stronger than me who also happens to be in perfect health while I'm beaten and bleeding all over. This isn't a question of odds anymore, this battle is looking desperate. Death looms, and the battle hasn't even began. That's a first. 3 ogres stood before them. The number still seemed much, but that was already roughly half their original number. I wonder if the king is safe, whispered the sword god's adherent, Go Amatsuki, who was visibly impatient. I don't know. But I do know that we have to cut these things down. A look of pain could be seen on Alyahalia's face. The Naga lance he's been using had burned even his own body, leaving it tattered and scorched. We're safe. We should believe that the king is safe too. The chief of the Gaidga, Rashka, ran into an ogre, and his right arm flashed black. I'd appreciate it if you didn't try to conclude things on your own. The goblin set his bow on the foe. He was the greatest of the archers, and for that he was bestowed the name, Gadiata. 2 arrows drew a line in the air as they aimed for the ogre's eyes, and following them was Princess Narsa's arrowless bow. Her bow had no arrows. It relied only on magic, and that meant that she had to focus. Not a waste of a word left her lips as she focused her will and drew her bow. The arrow entangles. Fair ring arrow. The 2 other ogres were stopped in their tracks by Gi-Za and the goblins from the Gi village, the stealthy Gi-G and the beast warrior Gi-Gi. Like a strong wind. Like a whirlwind, wind cutter, blades of wind cut at the ogre's legs, and Gi-Gi and Gi-G sent a flurry of attacks toward the opened wounds. Meanwhile, in the midst of the arrows, the magic, and the screaming ogres, was Kazan panicking. All the 4 treasures were here. The king wouldn't be able to use his power. Gi-Za seemed to hold unconditional faith in their king, but that was only because he looked down on the ogre lord. The power of the ogre lord is comparable to the 4 tribes. And who could tell what sort of changes might have occurred to it while it was living in the fortress? Only a mad man would believe the king able to live through something like that. If the king dies, so will her wish. A meeting with the Lord of Decay will not be possible. But, on the other hand, using the death crystal would mean throwing away her own life. She held the treasure tightly. We need to do something. She was weak, so thinking was the only thing she could do. Overwhelming power. G-o-u-u-o-u. Shockwaves erupted as the axe smashed into the ground. Those alone were enough to keep me from closing the distance. My one saving grace is that my right arm stopped bleeding. But just balling my right hand is enough to send a jolt of pain through me that feels unpleasantly close to being set on fire. My left hand is still fine, but just how much can I accomplish with it when I'm right-handed? Something half-hearted won't even hurt it. Compared to that, just one moment of negligence is all that's necessary to send me to my grave. TCH, another attack came at me. The ogre lord is relentless. That sweeping attack looked like it would send my head flying. I drew my head back to dodge it, but just when I thought I was safe, the ogre lord charged towards me. Somehow, I managed to escape by throwing myself to the floor. As I protected my arm and forgot the pain, I started thinking again. What should I do? At this rate, I'm going to lose. Is there really nothing I can do about my sealed ether? Suddenly, a chill went up my spine. kicked in, and my body moved by itself. That boulder-like axe descended right where I was standing it just moments ago. What? That was just now. What's going on? Aren't my ether and skills sealed? I'm sure that the N are all sealed. Although I don't know about the others since I haven't tested them. The situation is like this, so I might as well try everything. I can't use and because I haven't fulfilled the conditions, but would using be possible? The enemy right now is none other than the Ogre Lord, the leader of the Ogre's Horde. Skill, when fighting against another Horde Chief, magic power 20% up, damage taken is increased by 20% but damage dealt is increased by 30%. That's how that skill should work. A single hit is fatal to me right now, and once I turn into a crazed warrior, I won't be able to keep a sound mind. So, if I'm going to do it, there's no better time than now. The moment I activated, I felt the ether well up from within me. Fulfillment filled me as I tasted the sweet taste of that power. But still my fists dealt no damage even as I slammed them against the Ogre Lord's legs. What's going on? Then just to make sure, I tried using again. Gurua. What was normally supposed to weaken the enemy only made it matter. Next, I tried the second stage of a skill that makes me stronger and faster by 30% but can only activate when half of my life's been chipped off. I activated it on top of, and my body bolted off. I'm not as fast as when I'm using Excel, but my ether, strength, and agility are all far greater than in my normal state. Using that newfound power, I slipped through as the Ogre Lord's axe descended, and attacked it, but it was unfazed. Is the enemy's defense that great, or, there's one skill left? There are two possibilities I can think of. The next move will depend on which one is right, but, go mad, I said to my soul. And the activated. It reacted as the madness had begun taking over. Strength, agility, magic, each one of them went up by 30%. At the same time, the mental shackles that kept me from fighting to the fullest against an enemy I'd once lost to loosened. The damage to my fighting spirit lessened by 20%. Goo. Guuuuuaaaaaaaa. Volume 1, Chapter 75. Defeat. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race. Goblin level. 24 class. Lord, Horde Chief possessed skills. Ruler of the Horde, Insurgent will, Overpowering Howl, Swordsmanship B+, Insatiable Desire, King's Soul, Ruler's Wisdom I, Eyes of the Blue Snake, Dance at Death's Border, Red Snake's Eye, Magic Manipulation, Soul of a Crazed Warrior, Third Impact, the Third Chant, Instinct, Ruler's Wisdom II, Divine Protection. Goddess of the Underworld Attributes Darkness, Death Subordinate Beasts. High Kobold Hesu, LV1, Gastra, LV20, Cynthia, LV20, Orc King Bui, LV36, Gu, Guruu Yuva AAAAAA. The maddened soul screamed from within me, and a breath as hot as fire left my lips. My body burned hotter and hotter, and like a fire doused, steam seethed from my right arm. I was on fire. The black snake Varid coiled around my right arm seemed to squirm at the heat. Then the pain left me. I bore my heels into the ground. I gripped my fists tight. I howled with my jaws stretched to its limit, and I screamed with fervor to kill the enemy in front of me. RUUGUAAAAAA. The maddened soul of the crazed warrior howled like a beast, dyeing my mind at its color. Then I kicked off the ground, and my surroundings vanished, but my bones and flesh creaked like rusted gears. The boulder-like axe came swinging at me with a force strong enough to crush the ground and summon shockwaves. It was like a meteor, but I knew that if it hit me, everything would come to an end. With my skills back and the pain gone, I can make the impossible possible. Just before the axe hit me, I stopped my body, and forced it to turn right. The axe passed me by my left, and I found myself right at the Ogre Lord's chest. Oh, you are. With every power I could, I swung my right fist. Unknown to pain, my burning right fist buried itself into the ogre's cragged maw. The sound of something crushing audibly resounded. My fists had broken past the point of return, yet my maddened soul howled evermore. I don't know why or how. Maybe the ogre lord had received the blessing of some god or something, but I couldn't even put a scratch to it. I'm not strong enough. That realization was enough to make everything I've done to crumble. My crushed hand sizzled that it hopeless after all. For a mere goblin to defeat an ogre lord. Am I going to die? That despair seemed to reach even the crazed warrior's soul. And suddenly, it felt like my soul would be taken. No. I don't want to die. I activated, and I forcefully took back control of my mind. I turned away from the ogre lord. When I noticed it, sweat drenched my whole body. It's going to kill me. It's going to swing its axe and kill me. No. I don't want to die. I threw my body to the ground and crawled. I ran desperately from the embodiment of death. The axe swung again. Cold sweat drenched my back. I felt cold like a block of ice. My muscles tensed, my breath grew ragged. I don't want to die. For the first time since I became a goblin, I felt fear. Gaga gaga, the ogre laughed as it lifted its axe. Fear me. Cower. Run. I can hear the ogre lord laughing. My heart cowered like never before. I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared. The fear I had as a man was hiding somewhere deep within my heart, and now, it is free. My legs, my arms, my heart. Shackles began to wrap around me one after another. Triple A. G-A. Take that. I desperately dodged the ogre who was now playing around with me. I crawled on the ground and ran like a bug. I don't care anymore. I don't care about my comrades. I don't care about the young goblins. I just don't want to die. What a killjoy. The goddess of the underworld muttered as she watched through the magic mirror. It was as if all of her zeal until now was but a lie, as her voice resounded a chilling frost. Pitch black Verid. What is thy bidding? Aone that snake appeared before her. It was her servant that should have been coiled around the right arm of the Goblin King. It's boring. Yes. The snake meekly bowed as he looked into the magic mirror. It was an unsightly scene. The goblin cried despair as he tumbled on the ground. It was hard to believe this goblin the same as that proud soul he once called his younger brother. I feel stupid for having expected something. The goddess complained. Then the red snake wondered. Wasn't this exactly the true form of goblins and humans? To cower before fear, and to run from death. You can stop helping him now. Is that all right? I don't mind. I'm fed up with all this. A sure way to worsen his master's mood was to bring her hopes up. The only thing that was keeping the goblin together was Pitch Black's Verid ether. If not for him, he would have long died from all that abuse. He had affections for his younger brother, but the master's orders were absolute. As you command. I'm going to send him to an even more painful place once he comes. His soul will be crushed until nothing is left. Killing intent reflected off those golden eyes of hers. The goddess of the underworld was furious. Why won't my body move? Why is it so hard to breathe? Why am I fighting with a monster like this? Why am I? Suddenly, for some reason, all that ether that filled my body vanished. I watched as the ogre lord's axe descended on me. King. I don't even remember who last called out to me. Volume 1, Chapter 76. Pride of the King. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race. Goblin level. 24 class. Lord, Horde Chief. Possessed skills. Ruler of the Horde, Insurgent will, Overpowering Howl, Swordsmanship B+, insatiable desire, king's soul, ruler's wisdom eye, eyes of the blue snake, dance at death's border, red snake's eye, magic manipulation, soul of a crazed warrior, third impact, the third chant, instinct, ruler's wisdom 2, divine protection. Goddess of the underworld. Attributes. Darkness, death subordinate beasts. High Cobalt Jesu, LV1, Gastra, LV20, Cynthia, LV20, Orc King Bui, LV36, King. It was the druid, Gi-za, who called out to the king. Kuzan was wide-eyed as the ogre lord tore apart the king's body, and sent it flying to a wall. TCH. Save the king. Gi-za yelled in a desperate voice, waking the rest of the goblins out of their stupor. The chiefs of the 4 tribes and the goblins of the eastern village ran up to the ogre lord, while Kazan and Gi-za rushed to the king's side. It was a cruel and horrible sight. His guts spilled out from his wounds, and from all the blood he bled, he was no doubt a dead man. In fact, his heart had already stopped beating. The king had died. That king who was to carry the goblins on his back, who was to save the tribe of Gordab, who was to cut open a path to the Lord of Decay. That very king was dying right before Kazan's eyes. Kazan was speechless. Gi-za stood up. No. He flopped about, unable to stand straight, as his face went so pale it turned into a swarthy hue. Bas.ta.rd, what left his lips was a voice that seemed to curse everything. Each word brimmed with so much hate it felt like it could turn the dead of hell into wandering ghosts. Without a care for anything else, he ran for the ogre lord. It was a reckless charge with no regard for his life. The boulder-like axe descended, and it was the adherent of the sword god, Gi-go Amatsuki, who covered him. How is the king? Gi-go asked to the now kneeling Gi-za, but he couldn't say anything. Gi-go understood, and he grudgingly said, "Enemy of the king, you will pay." That voice spread throughout the entire battlefield, and everyone froze upon hearing it. Ga. So, that was the king. The ogre lord laughed. That guy ran around pathetically, you know. He begged me for his life. Indignation filled the goblins. For the sin of humiliating our king, pay with your life. Alyahalia's Naga lance crackled with violet lightning. No matter what, I will pay back the savior of my village. Gilmi and Narsa knocked their bows. Return to me, my defeat. The Vidal amulet sunk into Rashka's skin. Rage filled him, and his muscles swelled. I should have been the one to defeat him. A crazed light gleamed from Gi-go Amatsuki's eyes. There was a madness that came with the sword god's blessing, and the only thing that kept him from it was his gratitude to the king. That madness connected with his past defeat, and it ate into his mind. I will, he unsheathed his blade. Cut the king's enemy, vengeance shall be paid. The beast warrior Gi, the stealthy Gig. They knew they were powerless before the ogre lord, but still they pointed their blades at him. I won't forgive. I absolutely won't forgive you. Gi-za cursed in a voice so full of hate it seemed it would awake the denizens of hell. He took a stone out from his chest, and crushed it. Tornadoes sprouted up around him, and they took on the form of rampaging dragons. You will pay. That signaled the start of the battle. Kuzan still couldn't believe her eyes. The ogre lord was strong. She knew that, yet it seemed that she had still looked down on it. Gi-za's dragon tempest was swept away with a swing. Raska's black light and Alyahalia's spear couldn't even scratch the ogre lord's craggy flesh. Ga. The ogre lord only laughed at their attempts. As if to say that they were too weak. As if to say that the strong was always strong, and the weak always weak. The ogre lord mocked them. It was vexing. She held the death crystal in her hands. If she uses it, then they might still have a chance at winning. But the price for that is her life. And if she dies, she will never again meet the Lord of Decay. She will never again hear his voice. That voice she loved so much to the point of madness. She will lose it forever. But at this rate, everyone will die. She looked at Yellow, her father. His skin was white, and as a member of Gordab, he carried with him the sin of allowing the ogres to invade. Because the Gordab was weak, no one would listen to them. None of the 4 tribes would, and their prophecies only fell on deaf ears. Because they're weak, they can only walk toward death. Her mother, her older sister. Everyone was born white, none was exempted. And eventually, they all died, leaving behind only Kazan. She wanted to run. Surely, the 3 tribes could hold out long enough. Long enough for her to run. She stepped back. Master Kazan. When she heard Yellow, she wanted to break down into tears. She was Kazan, the head of the Gordab tribe. That name shackled her. If she were to run now, all of her brethren would surely die. Her older brothers and sisters who had given her food when she was young, and even her yet-to-be-born siblings. None of them would be spared. I'll do it. A look of surprise appeared on Yellow's face. He knew full well what would happen if she were to use the treasure. Are you sure? She nodded to him as she filled the death crystal with her strength. My body is heavy. It's as if I'm trudging through a pool of mud. My eyes are heavy, and there's a savage hunger gripping my guts. I can barely bear the pain. Sounds that couldn't be called words anymore left my lips. I want to sleep. If I sleep, then everything will cease. I thought that to myself as I bore the pain that was strong enough to extinguish even my soul. The dry wind of autumn that would ever scatter the dried leaves in its spell left through my hoarse throat. When I opened my eyes, a lake of fire appeared before me. It was right under me. What is this? Then when I looked up, I saw that the sky was red. It was literally a world wherein the land scorched hot and the sky burnt in anger. Why are you showing me this? Is this hell? Then I began to fall. The erupting flames swirled into maelstorms, erecting pillars of fire, and I fell toward it. Then just before I fell into the lake, darkness covered the whole world, and I fell into a world of darkness. It was dark like a cave. And in that darkness, I saw a sword buried into a rotten corpse. A one-eyed snake was wrapped around that sword. That snake looked at me, and when our gazes met, images flashed through my mind like a revolving lantern playing. That I'm going to save the king. I'm going to save him. Whose voice is that? It's fine. Take all of me. Who is this? But, you must fight. Fight with me, Goblin King. Ruler of the East, please save our village. Fine. I'll follow. For now, Paradual will raise its spear for you. We have no karma, but I beg of you, please save us. Kill me. If you don't, then one day, you will die by my hands. There is a woman crying. Why is she crying? Memories of her overlapped with her mourns. It was a woman whose name I'd already forgotten. I have to save her. I want to wipe away her tears, and cut down the source of her sorrow. There's no reason why. It's just something I have to do as a man. Zia, what did I tell her again when she asked me to kill her? Fight. I told her to fight with her own will, didn't I? Shia, so, what am I doing losing heart? Standing before her and me is the will of a god. But, even if I'm just a monster, isn't there something I can do to save her? Reshia. Out of my parched throat, I uttered her name, a name I'd forgotten, then before I knew it, I was standing before the sword around which the snake was coiled. I stretched out my hand in the darkness, and I pulled out the sword. Gaaa. As the death crystal emitted a faint light, the king's body started convulsing. The king that should have died cried out in pain, and the pain seemed to be beyond anything any man could imagine. His crushed right arm, his emboweled body, his creaking legs, sounds resounded from them as his body began to fix itself. Yet the king continued to convulse even as his wounds finished healing. His convulsing right arm reached out to the sky. G-triple-A-U-U-G-A-A-A-A-A. Drool flowed out of his mouth, and the pain that shook his body was so intense his eyes couldn't focus. Then like a puppet pulled on string, his body stood up. G-U-U-R-U-U-A-G-A. His eyes were like those of the dead. Tormented by pain, he was someone who was forcefully brought back from the land of the dead. There was no way he would come back with his sanity intact. G-U-R-U-U-A. The heavens and the earth trembled at his cry. That was the wailing cry of the dead. Kazan knew what she had to do. The death crystal could resurrect the dead, but the resurrected would lose his sanity. It is only when the caster gives up his own life that the resurrected could walk a sane man again. An unquenchable hunger torments the dead. They must feed off the life of a living lest they wish to find themselves dead once more. Which is why they must eat the flesh of the one that resurrected them. This spell has been passed down for generations. But, amongst the many generations of Kazan, the first one to use it is the founder, and the second is the current Kazan. The now insane goblin that was resurrected was horrifying. Though that might actually be the true nature of goblins, but it was not the king that Kazan knew. She reached out her hands to convey her thoughts to the king. Take my soul and overcome death. Like a beast, the king bared his fangs at her. O king of goblins! G-U-R-U-U-A-G-A. The king was about to consume her flesh, but when she called out to him, he stopped. Who am I? She couldn't believe her eyes. Pangs of savage hunger tormented him, an unimaginable pain coursed through him, and yet, he was actually able to speak. You are the king. The one who shall save us and rule the land. Now, come. Take my flesh and leave the land of the dead. I am the king. TCH. As his body convulsed, he fell down on his knees. He forcefully stopped his body from trying to eat Kazan. If you hold it back, you will lose your sanity. Please give in to your desire. If he forces himself not to eat, he will lose his mind. That was the case when the founder used the spell. Do you understand? What will happen to you? The price for using the death crystal is death. She used that knowing full well the consequences. You are the king. You are our king. If I am the king, then I shouldn't have to yield over something like this. The small Kazan was proud enough to sacrifice herself to save him. And yet, he, the king, would actually try to eat her to escape death. The pride of the king won't forgive something like that. I am the king. I yield to no one. I am he who will rule the world. Yielding to something like this, pain, that's unforgivable. The king howled. And as if to wring every bit of strength from his body, black flames spurted out of the snake coiled around his right arm. Nuuoo. He forcefully pulled out ether from Verid. No way. Are you all right? You should know, you resurrected me, right? I won't sway anymore. I'll show you just what sort of man your king is. The king was able to grasp the skill in ether that should have been sealed by the fortress. Level has risen 24. 72, skill, to mental attacks greatly mitigated, damage and defense against higher races is greatly increased, can steal the power of the god you represent. Skill, and will become you can read the status of people with classes lower than yours. If the number on your side is greater than the enemy's, then the enemy's weakness will be revealed. Skill, for having stolen the power of Verid, You will gain the power of the household of the gods, mental resistance against gods other than the goddess of the underworld will increase, resistance to the goddess of the underworld's charm will decrease, charm toward members of the same race will greatly increase.